It smells so good. What is this called? Buckwheat?
No.
Buckbrush.
No.
Brush. What is it?
Bitter brush.
Bitter brush. Well, right now it's in bloom and it just smells so good. It's just so fragrant out here. It's really nice.
Yeah.
And we're gonna just tear it all out. All of it.
Yeah. Well, kind of, yeah. So before we can put anything in the ground, we got to do the dirt work. We've got a spot that's kind of already flattened out, and we'll come from there and cut terraces, carve them out, refine them, and shelf them out so that we can put our fruit trees out here and berry bushes, maybe even try out some grapes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at, like, looking down the maple line, right? We've got a handful of maples right here, and we just don't want to touch them. We want to leave them in. And we'll stay back a few feet from the actual cut. Probably something like that. And then right down in line to that one, right? And this is all pretty close to the same elevation. About like so. That's definitely more than 100 feet. Way more than 100 feet. It gets a little steep back in here. We'll start in coming this way and stay at the same elevation. Back in here it gets real steep, so we'll probably fade off a little short of this. We're talking a 14-foot terrace width, and that width, 14 feet, is clear over here, and that's about a 6-foot drop, 5 to 6 foot at least, from here to there. So it's going to be a big cut and a big shift. But out here, it's not nearly as steep. A 14-foot cut out there is only 3 or 4 foot difference. I don't want to overcut this back here. I'd rather leave it at a slope like this and leave it alone than try to force in a terrace. It's going to be a really aggressive cut. And plus, we don't need 6 rows at 180 feet long or whatever it is.
We don't?
Well,
come on, Mark.
It's it'll take a lifetime to fill it up with trees. Thank you. I'm pretty anxious about this.
Yeah, you've had it for a couple of years.
Yeah. We bought that mower 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah,
I think 2 years ago on the auction. And I've been anxious to. But I needed this other return line that we ran when we had it in the shop.
Yeah. You want a hammer?
No, no.
Your fist is the hammer?
Just need to pull gently. This wind is strong today out here. Okay. Let's hook that beast on and see what it does. But let's clear some things so I don't squash them first, yeah? I don't want to smash them or bend them or...
Well, I don't need it.
I know. The soil out here is all sand. There's none of the clay that we have in the other spots. It's all very sandy, soft. There's a lot of rocks in it, but it's got good drainage. It's south facing slope. So if sunrise over here and sunset, and it all faces south. So we're gonna terrace this for a fruit orchard. The thing about it out here is our region is technically considered a zone 4 region for climate, But out here on this hill, the temperatures and the snow season and everything else is much more acclimatized to zone 5.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
And you go around the corner of the hill here towards the woods where the shop is, and it changes to zone 3. Where the house is, it's more zone 3. We have wet soil way late into the season. It retains a lot more soil because it's clay, but that's where we have snow late into the season, and colder temperatures out here on the sun. It's just a different thing. So
Okay.
for that reason, we're going to put fruit trees, berries, and possibly grapes. That's why we want them out here on the face.
Yeah. And we want a really high production kind of orchard. We don't want like 10 trees. We're looking at 20 to 30 to 50 types, all sorts. Like we're talking about a huge orchard out here.
Yeah.
So we want a high production orchard.
So the soil is nice and sandy, but it's not very nutrition. So we need to bolster the soil in the beds and boost it up with some good nutrition that's going to last. Not just like add fertilizer to it, but actually add a bunch of organic matter and get some good material in there, so we've got a good mix of soil so it'll last for years, and then we can top dress it and keep adding to that soil.
Yep.
This location is lower than our tanks, so we can still maintain pressurized water out to here.
But we're hoping to do just drip lines. We don't want a sprinkler system, none of that. We want a drip line system.
Yeah.
And that, so it doesn't take up a bunch of water and it's effective and
Gets it right to the roots.
Yeah, gets it right to the roots.
We moved up here to our property in September of 21. And that whole summer before that, we spent a lot of time going over lists of things that we felt like we were going to need in order to be up here successfully full time. Some of those items were things like the Rangers and gas-powered welder and generators, things like that, making sure that we had the right type of equipment that we could definitely be successful up here, being off-grid. After spending our first fall and spring up here, we realized there was a few other pieces of equipment that were going to make a big difference in what we were able to do up here. So June 2 years ago, we went to the auctions and we purchased a few things to help with the maintenance and the management up here. Some of those things we realized we needed were things like the compaction roller for the roads, a rotor tiller to go behind the tractor, and this mower. We knew that we had areas in the pastures that we had for our animals that had a bunch of brush and sagebrush and things that were not as good vegetation for them to browse on. It was all right for the goats, but for our future plans would need a little bit of work. We weren't having any intentions of trying to clear our mountain of all sagebrush and bitterbrush and things like that, but inside of our pasture areas, we definitely wanted to increase the growth and the feed efficiency. Now, I don't know anything about this mower other than it's a Chinese unbranded auction buy that was brand new, and it's relatively cheap. I know that we paid around $1,500 for it from the auction, which is about a tenth of what a high quality name brand flail mower of this application would probably cost. I really hope that this thing holds together and does a good job for us for the long haul, but I know it's not that $15,000 mower that's going to spend 10 hours a day every day getting used all summer long. So hopefully it's going to work out for us in the long run. We picked up this mower and brought it home, and as I got looking into it, I realized that I didn't have the right attachments to make it work on my machine because I needed that case drain for the high-speed hydraulic motor. Everything else was pretty much a direct fit, but I knew it was going to take a little bit of figuring out and deciding what was going to be necessary in order to get that case drain installed. That was something I simply didn't have the time for that first summer, and it just fell by the wayside in terms of priority. Until now. So while I had the excavator in the shop, I got that case drain installed so that I could get this mower out and really put it to use this spring and summer to help improve these pastures, and especially to help with this orchard space. This orchard has basically been on our wish list for 8 years since we bought the property. We've looked at this space several times and thought, man, it would be perfect for fruit trees, plenty of sun, side slope, well-drained soil, all those things that would make it really, really nice for a fruit orchard. However, at the time, we barely had a water system installed. We didn't have any way to really distribute the water well anywhere on our property, and it would have been really difficult to get trees in immediately without having a real solid plan that was going to last a long time. So the plan is to terrace this side of hill and get it really built out nicely to give us a long growth on this orchard and get everything established really nice. Easy to maintain and easy to keep things growing well. So after many years of discussing it and kicking around the ideas and reevaluating it and changing opinions and reevaluating it again, the last couple of years we've been settled on this plan.
Now that we ran that for a little bit yesterday, I'm gonna take a minute and just clear this whole section out here in this fence line. We've had goats on this stuff before and they strip it pretty good, but you're still left with the main stock, which then has to go back and get cleaned up. I'd rather just mulch it right down to the ground and feed the soil. We're also going to be planting back lots of bushes and shrubbery, undergrowth, tall vegetation, trees, a variety of all kinds of things in here, including ground cover that we'll mow and maintain to try to keep feeding that soil and build that soil up. Out here it's very, very sandy. It's a different kind of texture than everything out there farther in on the farm. So we're going to capitalize on that good soil drainage and really bolster it up with some good nutrition so that we can create a really nice orchard space for all kinds of fruit trees, as well as berries and different things like that. So I'm going to get in here and clear the rest of the shrubs from the rest of the zone out here, and once that's all cleared and set, then I'll come back and disconnect the mower and we'll get to digging. If I'd have come in here with the excavator and tried to pull all that and grub all that out, it's got such a deep embedded root ball that it's hard to get a hold of and peel out without just ripping the ground apart. You can see this is so sandy out here anyway. Last thing I want to do is excessively rip and tear the ground. So I want to take out enough to make it easy. I want all of this fine mulchings to be part of the soil, get that carbon sequestered deep into the soil and help bolster that soil so that it can actually be something really productive. If I had grubbed it out, then I still got to deal with the brush pile it up somewhere, burn it, wait for it to burn out, scatter the ash, bury it down. And the problem with that is that once I burned it, it actually makes my soil more alkaline, and our soil out here looks great, but it's not very fertile and its acidity is very, very neutral. So for a lot of the plants, they need a little bit on the higher end of acidity. So that means we've got to come in here and amend the soil like crazy just to get it to be really fruitful. And adding the fire ash like that, the wood ash, brings that pH way to the alkalinity side, which effectively counteracts everything we need to do out here. So I didn't want to burn it and push it in. I'll get a lot more benefit out of having all that munched and mulched and turned into the soil deeper. That'll all break down over time and just fortify the soil. A lot of this stuff is going to be deep in the soil, and for the trees that's going to be ideal because they'll go searching for this carbon that's way down in the ground, and that'll get us in a much better position for our trees to thrive and do a good job in the future. Well, that did the trick in a hurry. That looks great. All the brush is cleared. This janky looking tree down here is actually a choke cherry, and it's pretty long in the tooth. It's an old tree. It's got a shoot or two that is pretty good. I'm gonna try to prune the heck out of that thing and see if we can make it healthy again. But it looks great. Man, I love that thing. I made fast work of that. It's awesome. Moving on to the next phase.